Sorry to do another video so soon, but I frequently get this question and I received it in the comments, and I realized as I was trying to comment back on my last video that it would just be easier if I did a video about this. So this is my personal advice on tips to applying to the Peace Corps. And take that with a grain of salt, because everybody's Peace Corps experience is different, and there are plenty of people who will tell you, their personal advice. Follow the subreddit on Peace Corps and everything, and read people's blogs and the Peace Corps website and stuff like that. And luckily for me, I have a really good RPCV community here in New Orleans. Louisiana Peace Corps Association is here, and they regularly meet because I'm an MI. So we have monthly meetings, and so we get to meet them through that, as well as we do a lot of collaborations between the MIs and the RPCVs. So that if you, I know the MI program is officially not a thing anymore, but if you're really interested in Peace Corps, I would say definitely try to hook up with an RPCV community. In most major cities there should be one, and you should be able to find information about it either through your local university who does have an MI program or whatever, or if you talk to a recruiter who's in your area, they can hook you up with those people. And one thing that they always tell me every time I'm talking to an RPCV is that everybody's experience is different, be it application or once you're in service. So I know two volunteers who went to the same exact country, were right at the same time, and had completely different experiences. So again, take what they say with a grain of salt, because everybody's experience is different. But the main topic of this, tips on applying. So I would say look at the qualifications. They usually cycle yearly of the positions that you're going to apply. So I saw in August of 2015, when I was first talking to people here about what I wanted to do, and my MI director, she pointed out this position in Panama, which is the position I ultimately applied for and got accepted for. So she was looking online, because you can look basically a year in advance, because they're going to cycle every year basically almost all the same positions unless they change them, or that country no longer offers that program. So in doing that, I learned about the qualifications for said position. Minimum bachelor's degree in a environmental related field, or I think it's 5+ years experience in the field, Spanish fluency either through being a native speaker, taking college classes, or passing with a certain percentage on the CLEP test, and other just other qualifications of what it would be. It talks about the description of the job and living conditions of the country. So for me, I didn't care where I went. I really I kind of had it in my head that I wanted to be in a Spanish-speaking country because I had experience with Spanish. But at the end of the day, I was willing to go wherever, so long as I was doing the work that I wanted to do, which was with the water and sanitation, because that's what I'm getting my degree in. But other people have different preferences. Some people really want to be in West Africa, so they're looking at West African countries and then kind of seeing what's available. Other people have absolutely no preference, and you can do that. You can sit there and say, I want to go wherever and I want to do whatever. Now keep in mind, when you do that, that means that they're going to find you whatever they've determined is the best qualified position for you, and they're going to put you wherever you're needed, and whatnot. So I put that as my last option. I put two other environmental related, or I guess technically I didn't do that. I put that I want to work in environment and go wherever as my last option. And my first option was Panama. My second option was Mexico, because there was an environmental resources thing, which was kind of what I wanted to do, but not entirely, but it was still in the environmental field. Now there is a new system of how, like, you can be under consideration for multiple things. So I don't know how that chooses your, or how that affects your choosing of your, like, preferences, because they just changed it. Granted, they had just changed it right before I applied, so they're kind of overhauling everything. But yeah, so I would say look at those qualifications and start tailoring your resume to whatever that is. So for me, I took Spanish lessons because while I had taken the minimum requirement in college, I didn't feel like that was enough Spanish for me to really go and be effective. So I've spent the last 2 years taking Spanish lessons, doing Duolingo, which Duolingo has like the majority of languages on there, and they're constantly adding languages. So even though you may not be going to a Spanish-speaking country, or you may not be interested in a Spanish-speaking country, there are other languages that you can do on Duolingo. So once you kind of see the qualifications, start volunteering with things like that. Like I worked, where I spent a few months working at a water quality place. Did some water quality work and just like really tailoring my resume even more so than like my coursework. Like for instance, if you don't have a degree in the field, like let's say you don't have an agriculture degree, but you're wanting to do agriculture, start, you know, working with local gardens and, you know, doing things to maybe taking like a night course on whatever. Start tailoring your resume to where you meet those minimum qualifications, or you can exceed those to where they, you know, makes you a competitive applicant. They're now saying, I think it's a 15% acceptance rate of applicants, is what my Peace Corps director was telling us. So that means they're receiving a high volume of applicants, and which part of the reason they got rid of the MI program is that they no longer needed so many applicants as they did previously, and so you really need to have specifics. Also, on these country descriptions or position descriptions, it'll tell you restrictions. So, for instance, Panama, the only restriction I think was if you can't eat eggs, or whatever. So it doesn't have a lot of health restrictions. So people who have conditions that need to be more monitored can go to this country because it's easy access. Whereas some countries, you know, they can't support gluten intolerant people, or people who are vegans, or people who have certain diseases like asthma and things like that. So keep that in mind too when you're looking for countries and positions, is that which is part of why I kind of kept an open mind, is that the only thing, there's even countries that can't support the fact that I wear glasses. So yeah, just because you'd be so far away. So keep that in mind with your country choices and everything. And no, at the end of the day, when they're choosing whatever you get placed under consideration for, or get an interview or invite, they're doing it based on what you've presented to them and they think is the best fit for that country. So, you know, you may want to be a teacher, but you have a ton of ag experience. So they're probably going to put you in an ag thing, even though you want to be a teacher, just simply because you're more qualified, and that may be more of what they need, type of thing. So just kind of keep an open mind type of thing. So, and tailor your resume to what, like, if you do have more of an ag background and you want to be a teacher, start tutoring, start, you know, working on towards to where you could be a qualified candidate for that type of thing. And volunteer experience is highly important. They weigh that, from what I've heard, they weigh that more than they do necessarily your coursework. Good coursework background, obviously you have to have a bachelor's for most positions, but definitely having that volunteer experience, you know, type of thing is very helpful. So the next thing is patience. What you're applying for is not something where things happen quickly. I started these videos back in July, August, and I'm still going through the process. And I won't leave till July. So it's a long, drawn-out thing. And so, like for me, I applied, or my official application submission was September 2nd. I was placed under consideration on September 9th. I didn't hear anything back for interview or anything until October, when my recruiter or my placement officer was like, I know you haven't heard anything, but you applied super early in the process, so you're not going to hear anything for a little while. So I didn't hear anything about an interview until November. And then I had my interview, and then I still had to wait 2 months before I even got an invite. So, you know, and there was somebody on the Reddit who was talking about that they waited 4 months from interview to invite. So it's one of those things where it is a time-consuming process. And even after you've accepted, I'm waiting on medical clearance, despite the fact of having submitted all of my paperwork, and I'm still waiting on legal clearance, even though I submitted that back in January, type of thing. So it's a long, drawn-out process. And even though I haven't gone yet, I've heard that even once you're in country, things are long, drawn-out processes, because things do not move at the pace at which they move here. And you're not just going in and just like taking over and doing a whole bunch of stuff. You've got to move with the community. The community has to want it and need it. So sometimes, you're supposed to be doing these community assessments. So even if you determine that they need this, if the community doesn't want it, there's no real change going to happen. And there's nothing that's really going to move forward on that. So even though a community may need something, you may have to put it on the back burner because that's not really what they deem as important to them. And so you have to have patience with that, because even stuff that people deem as important, they're slower on moving forward. So patience. And I am preaching to the choir, because I'm not a patient person. I'm one of those people that likes to know things now, and do things now, as opposed to waiting. But I'm trying to work on it. And let's see here, some other tips for applying. Just kind of, even though it's a long process, enjoy the process, because that means that they're taking their time, truly, going through applicants. And if you get an invite, like, you should feel like, yes, I was one of the ones selected, type of thing. And I've heard people who had their sights set on countries or set on positions, and they got something else, or their country got canceled and they had to go to another place, and it ended up being way better than what they could have ever imagined. So keep an open mind, and really, like, even if you're not planning on applying for another 3 years while you finish your degree, or get the work experience, whatever, start working now, because the more competitive you are, the better your chances are. And also, don't always look at the highly enticing countries. And by that I mean like Costa Rica, which is more of a tourist destination, and the Philippines and things like that, because those are the ones that everybody wants. Everybody wants to go and work there, because again, they sound like tourist destinations. And some of the higher need countries can be just as rewarding. And so, yeah, those are my tips. Not 100% sure if they're helpful, and again, it's my personal experience. I knew officially I didn't have to go take extra Spanish lessons, but I also knew I wanted to be super prepared, and I wanted to, have language really kind of be one of the lesser of my worries, because I don't have an engineering background, and some of the work that I'll have to be doing will be engineering related. So I wanted to focus more on my technical skills that they're going to be able to teach me in country type of thing. Because while I have like the general knowledge base about water systems and how they work and whatnot, I really want to focus on technical skills and focus less on language training, which is why I wanted to go ahead and have some of that language training. And because here in the States it's really hard to get that engineering background without really doing an engineering degree. And I didn't necessarily want to go through an engineering program because my lifelong goal is not to be an engineer. So I would say start looking at positions. They change like every 3 months. So if you don't see one now, you might see one in the next cycle or the cycle after that, or the next cycle, and see things that are interesting to you. Because like I know Panama agricultural and environmental health volunteers go in July, but in February is when English, I think it's either community development or youth and development, one of the two, go. Teaching English is what I meant. And those go in February. So there's like 4 programs within that country, but they cycle at different times. So we're not all getting there at the same time. So, keep that in mind. Like, let's say you look now and you don't see positions that you're necessarily interested. Well, there'll be some more that get brought in. And talk to a recruiter. Recruiters can look and see, okay, this is what your resume looks like, and here's what your motivation statement or whatever it's called looks like, and can kind of give you some ideas of what to do. But I would definitely talk to RPCDs about their experience, because that helped me a lot, and I was able to kind of pull on those in my interview. Which for the interview, I would say have some real world experiences of like, there's a Reddit thing about like interview questions that get asked, and it's very spot on, at least in my case. But have some real world experiences, because they want to know, okay, yeah, you've dealt with like tough people, but what's a specific instance in which this happened, type of thing. Not, oh, well, I'm, really hardworking, or whatever, answer to the question is. They want to see, okay, you've dealt with something like this in the past, type of thing. So, if you have any other questions, always feel free to leave them in the comments. I may do a video or just answer directly. But I felt like this warranted a video just simply because lots of people ask me this question on like advice on applying, as well as just like tips and stuff like that. And so yeah, wanted to do the video. So even though it's like right after my last video, I'm gonna submit this, and see you next time when hopefully I am medically and legally cleared.